My name is Deja Washington, 28 years old, from South Oak Cliff, Dallas, Texas. I thought the DNA test was just a fun Christmas gift, until it revealed that the man who raised me wasn't my father. And the man who had paid to keep me a secret my entire life. Now, I'm uncovering lies, exposing the powerful, and taking back everything they tried to bury. If you love true stories with twists, betrayal, and revenge that hits where it hurts, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new upload. This one starts with a DNA test and ends with a legacy rewritten. Let's get into it. It started as a joke. Every year, my cousin Latasha came up with some quirky Christmas gift to outdo the year before. One time it was personalized mugs with our faces superimposed on historical figures. Last year, it was custom socks with inside jokes printed across the toes. This year? DNA kits. Y'all know you always wondered who really got the good hair, she laughed, passing out the boxes at Christmas dinner. I rolled my eyes but smiled anyway. We were packed into Mama Rhonda's house in South Oak Cliff, the same way we always were: plastic tablecloths, sweet tea in gallon jugs, and somebody's baby crying in the back room. Family. Loud, messy, real. The kit sat on my dresser for a few weeks after that. I wasn't in any rush. I already knew my roots, black through and through, maybe a little Cherokee on my daddy's side. Like every other Southern family claims, but one slow Sunday afternoon, I spit in the tube, sealed it up, and dropped it in the mail. Just for fun, I didn't think about it again until I got the email: "Your results are ready." I opened the app expecting a colorful pie chart, maybe a cool surprise about my great-great-grandparents. Instead, I saw one word that made my heart stop: parent match found, Curtis Dixon, 99.9% probability. I stared at the screen. My throat went dry. Curtis Dixon wasn't just a random name. He was someone I knew. A name I hadn't heard in years but couldn't forget. When I was little, he'd show up in shiny suits, alligator shoes, and a thick gold chain tucked under his dress shirt. My mom worked for him when I was about 7 or 8, some office job downtown in Uptown near Turtle Creek. He was her boss, but I remember how she'd stiffen when he called, how she'd send me to my room when he visited. I thought he was just rich and rude. I never thought he was family. I backed out of the app, heart thudding. I opened it again. Still there: Curtis Dixon. Age 62. Lives in Highland Park. My hands shook. Where the hell was Earl's name? The man who raised me, who taught me how to ride a bike, who yelled at the Cowboys on Sundays like they could hear him through the screen. Where was his name? Nowhere. I felt like the ground under me had cracked. Like my whole identity had a false bottom I never saw coming. I didn't want to believe it. But DNA doesn't lie, and suddenly, that little fun gift had become a fuse. Something was buried deep in my family, and I had just lit the match. I couldn't sleep. The name Curtis Dixon flashed in my mind every time I closed my eyes. The DNA test wasn't just some glitch. The app confirmed it 3 times: parental match, 99.9% probability. I even called customer service, praying they'd tell me it was a mistake. It wasn't. The man I grew up calling Dad wasn't listed anywhere. Not under close family, not even under distant relatives. Just gone, like a name deleted from a file. And there, bold and undeniable, sat Curtis Dixon. I searched his name again, now with a growing knot in my stomach. LinkedIn, Zillow, even Google Maps. He still lived in Highland Park, just north of downtown: white picket fences, Range Rovers, brick mansions, the whole thing. A far cry from our tiny duplex off Camp Wisdom Road. Curtis Dixon was still very much who he always was: a powerful real estate developer with property all over Dallas. A man who flipped entire neighborhoods and lobbied city officials while the rest of us prayed rent didn't go up. He didn't just own buildings. He owned stories. Neighborhoods. Silence. And he had owned a piece of my mother's past. I remembered how quiet she got when his name came up. How she'd leave the room or change the subject. I hadn't thought much of it then. But now, everything was different. I pulled out the one photo I had of Earl from my dresser drawer. He was holding me at a birthday party, blowing out candles with a crooked grin. His arms were strong. Solid. He looked like the man I always thought would walk me down the aisle one day, but he wasn't my father. I felt something crack inside me, not because of genetics, but because of what that match meant. Earl had raised me. He taught me right from wrong. Bought me my first stethoscope when I got into nursing school. He was the one who patched my bike tire and grounded me for sneaking out to that party, and he didn't know. At least, I didn't think he did. Now I wasn't so sure about anything. I needed answers. Real ones. Not assumptions, not half-truths. I needed to hear it from the only person who could confirm what the test told me, Mama. I grabbed my keys and headed out the door. The cold air slapped my face as I walked to the car, but it didn't matter. Curtis Dixon might be my biological father. But I wasn't ready to let that title mean anything yet, not until my mother looked me in the eye and told me the truth. Because the match didn't just reveal DNA, it revealed betrayal, and I was done pretending I didn't feel it. The porch light was still on when I pulled up. Mama always left it on, even when no one was coming. She said it made the house feel less lonely. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the chipped paint on the front door, the familiar creak in the step that had never been fixed. My whole life had played out inside this little house, and now it felt like a stage built on lies. She answered before I knocked. Maybe she'd heard the car, maybe she just felt it. Deja? She asked, her voice soft, uncertain. It's late, baby. Everything okay? No, I said, stepping past her. We need to talk. She followed me into the living room, her robe pulled tight around her like armor. I stood in front of the couch, hands clenched, heart racing. I took a DNA test, I said. Her face didn't change at first. She blinked once, maybe twice. Then the color drained, and it says Earl's not my father. She sat down slowly, like her knees gave out. It matched me to someone else, I continued. Curtis Dixon. Her eyes welled, and for a second, I thought she might deny it. Might lie one more time just to preserve whatever thread of control she had left, but she didn't. Instead, she whispered, I always knew this day would come. My throat tightened. Why didn't you tell me? She didn't look at me. She stared at the coffee table like it might offer her an escape. I made a mistake, she said. It was one time. One time I wish I could take back every single day. That one time is the reason I exist, I snapped. Her shoulders trembled. Your daddy, Earl, he wanted a family so bad. I was scared to lose him. I didn't know for sure, and by the time I did. She looked up, tears falling freely now. You were already his. But I wasn't, I said. Not by blood. And now he's gone, and I don't even know if he left because of me or because of you. I never meant for this to fall on you, she said, voice breaking. Curtis. He wasn't supposed to mean anything. He had money, power, all that, but he used people. I was young and stupid. I thought I had control. But he controlled everything, didn't he? I asked. She nodded slowly. I wanted to protect you, she said. From him. From the truth. From the shame. I turned away. You were supposed to give me honesty, not secrets. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. I didn't know what hurt more, her betrayal or the fact that I still loved her through it. Because even in the middle of that wreckage, she was still my mama, but everything had changed, and I wasn't sure we could come back from it. I didn't tell Earl, Mama did. I came home from work 2 days after our confrontation to find his truck missing and the front door wide open. Mama sat at the kitchen table, eyes red, staring at a cup of cold coffee she hadn't touched. He's gone, she whispered. I didn't have to ask where. He'd left his house key on the counter. Just placed it there like it didn't weigh 30 years. He said he needed time, she added, as if that softened the blow, but I knew better. Earl wasn't the kind of man who stormed off. He was the kind who stayed until it hurt to breathe. If he left, it meant something broke too deep to patch. That night, I lay in bed listening to the silence. No TV in the living room. No football commentary or ice clinking in a glass. Just absence. I kept thinking about all the memories we'd made, bike rides, father-daughter dances, Sunday barbecues. None of that felt fake. So why did it now feel so hollow? I opened my laptop and searched Curtis Dixon again. I couldn't sit in this pain and do nothing. I needed to know more. The man who stole my father's place didn't get to stay a shadow. Curtis's online presence was spotless. Polished photos and designer suits. Articles praising his revitalization of underdeveloped Dallas neighborhoods, code for gentrification. Campaign donations, speaking engagements, smiling with city council members. But the deeper I looked, the more the cracks showed. On a small community blog, I found a post from 2011. A woman named Angela accused Curtis of coercing her into silence after a complicated personal relationship while she worked under him. The post had no comments. No shares. Almost like it had been buried on purpose. On a Reddit thread for Dallas real estate gossip, someone posted, "Curtis Dixon pays people to disappear. Ask around in Oak Cliff. Money buys memory loss." Most people shrugged it off as conspiracy, but I didn't. It fit, the cold way he looked at me when I was a child. The tension in Mama's voice whenever he called. The way she never spoke his name for years. Curtis had power, and he wielded it like a weapon, quietly, strategically, and without consequences, until now, because I wasn't just going to accept the past. I wasn't built like that. I had Earl's patience, but I also had his fire. And Curtis Dixon was going to learn that some daughters don't stay silent. Not after watching the only real father they had walk away without looking back. Finding Curtis Dixon wasn't hard. He wasn't the kind of man who hid. He didn't have to. People like him, the rich, the connected, the untouchable, they build lives out in the open, daring anyone to challenge them. I showed up at his uptown office without an appointment. His receptionist, a tight-lipped woman in pearls, tried to wave me off until I dropped his name, Deja Washington. Her eyes widened. She hesitated, then picked up the phone. After a short, hushed conversation, she waved me through with a forced smile. His office was everything I expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Dallas. White leather chairs. A whiskey cart that probably cost more than my car, and there he was. Curtis Dixon, 60-something, silver hair, designer suit, posture like he owned the air itself. "Well," he said, leaning back, "if it isn't the secret I tried to bury." I didn't sit. "We need to talk." He studied me for a moment. "You've got her eyes. Same fire, too. Rhonda never did know how to leave things alone." "She left you alone," I said. "You stayed in our life a lot longer than you should have." He chuckled, actually chuckled. "I paid my way out of that chapter, sweetheart. Thought I bought enough silence to last a lifetime." My jaw tightened. "You used my mother, lied to her, and now I find out you're my biological father like it's some trivia fact? You have no idea what that's done to me, what it's done to us." "I never claimed to be a saint," he said casually, pouring a drink. "Your mother knew the game. So did Earl. I helped them when they needed it. Paid for a roof, food, school. Wasn't my name on the birth certificate, but I made sure you didn't go without." I could barely breathe. "That doesn't make you a father. That makes you a coward with a wallet." He sipped his drink. "You came here looking for something, closure? Recognition? A check?" "I came to see your face," I said coldly. "To look at the man who blew a hole in my life and never once said sorry." He set his glass down, slow and deliberate. "Let me make something clear, I don't do guilt. I don't do apologies. Everything I've built, every deal, every favor, it all came with choices. Your mother made hers. So did I." I felt sick. Not just at his words, but at how calm he was. How sure he was that nothing could touch him. "You think you're protected," I said. "But people like you forget, every empire has cracks. I just needed to see where yours started." He smiled. "Be careful, Deja. You start digging, you might not like what you find." I walked out without another word, but he was wrong about one thing. I wasn't scared of what I'd find, I was scared of what I might do with it. I didn't sleep that night. Curtis Dixon's smug face haunted every corner of my mind. The way he sipped that drink, like none of this mattered, like I didn't matter, lit something in me I couldn't put out. He thought this was over. He thought his money buried everything. But the truth has a way of surviving. 2 days later, I was at Mama's house helping her clean out the hall closet. Earl's absence left the place colder, quieter. She moved slower now, like the weight of the years she carried had finally settled into her bones. "You mind taking those old boxes out to the shed?" she asked. I grabbed one marked taxes 2008 to 2010 and nearly left it alone, until I noticed it wasn't sealed. The flap was tucked shut, but not taped. Something told me to look. Inside was a plain manila folder. No label, just a rubber band stretched around it. I opened it slowly, careful not to spill anything. What I found stopped me cold. Emails, printed and highlighted. Some from Curtis's company email, some from an anonymous Gmail account. The tone was clinical, almost threatening. "I expect this to remain between us, as agreed. The monthly amount will continue so long as discretion is maintained." Attached were scanned checks and deposit slips, monthly payments into a bank account in Mama's name. Thousands of dollars. Every month for years. Then came property records. Curtis had quietly transferred a small duplex in Pleasant Grove to Mama just 6 months after I was born. The deed had no public announcement. It was tucked under a shell company tied to his real estate firm. A timeline began to form in my mind. He hadn't just made a mistake and moved on. He had orchestrated a life around it. Structured silence. Purchased loyalty. Covered tracks, and Mama. She'd kept it all. Not out of greed, but maybe guilt. Or fear. Or both. I sat on the floor and spread everything out around me. This wasn't just a secret. It was a paper trail, damning, undeniable. The kind of thing that could collapse a career, ruin a legacy. My hands trembled as I realized what I was holding. Curtis Dixon had built his empire on concrete and lies. And here, in a dusty closet on the south side of Dallas, was the truth he never thought would surface. I picked up one email and read it again. Any exposure will create a problem for everyone involved. He wasn't just protecting himself. He was warning her. Threatening her. But I wasn't scared of problems. I was scared of what would happen if I stayed quiet, like they all had. I gathered the folder, tucked everything back inside, and stood up. Curtis Dixon had erased people before, but this time, the daughter he tried to pay off was coming for him, and I had the receipts. I stared at the folder for hours that night. I laid everything out on my bed like a puzzle only I could finish: emails, wire transfers, property deeds. All of it proof that Curtis Dixon hadn't just made a mistake. He had constructed an entire machine of coercion, payoff, and silence. The more I read, the more the anger hardened into purpose. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about all the people he'd silenced, all the women he'd cornered, all the deals he'd bought his way into, while presenting himself to Dallas as some polished, philanthropic developer. Curtis Dixon had stolen years from my family. He took my father's name from me, broke my mother's spirit, and dared to wear his arrogance like armor. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront him again. I was going to expose him, quietly. Thoroughly, and publicly. I created a burner email and uploaded the documents to an encrypted folder. No names, just evidence. Then I wrote the subject line carefully: undisclosed payoffs, coercion, and abuse of power, Curtis Dixon's hidden empire. I sent it to every local news outlet in Dallas. I expected silence. Maybe a polite rejection, but 2 days later, I got a reply from a young reporter at KDFW, Noelle Ramirez. Her message was short, but clear: "I believe this. Can we talk?" We met in the back corner of a quiet cafe in Bishop Arts. She was barely 30, wore no makeup, and carried a laptop covered in stickers that screamed college journalist turned professional truth digger. I handed her a copy of the folder. Watched her eyes scan the pages. "This is real?" she asked. "Every word." She nodded slowly. "You know what this could do, right?" "I'm counting on it." The story aired 3 nights later. Prime time, Dallas developer accused of paying off former employees, concealing paternity. Noelle had done her homework, cross-referencing the shell companies. verifying the bank records, finding others willing to speak anonymously. She didn't name me. But the dots weren't hard to connect. Curtis Dixon's perfect image began to crumble. Twitter lit up. Local forums buzzed. A city councilman released a statement distancing himself from Dixon's business ventures, and just like that, his empire began to shake. The fuse I lit had reached the fire. I watched the segment alone in my apartment, knees pulled to my chest, heart pounding, not from fear, but from clarity. He wanted me buried in shame. Forgotten. Silent. Instead, I'd turned his empire against him, using his own secrets as kindling. It wasn't just revenge, it was justice, and I was just getting started. By the end of the week, Curtis Dixon's name was everywhere, and not in the way he liked. The man who once smiled from billboards, boasting about revitalizing Dallas communities, was now the face of scandal. Dixon accused of years-long coercion scheme. Developer secret payments under fire. Whistleblowers say Dixon used power to silence victims. His polished empire cracked at the seams. First came the investors. Real estate partners and board members issued cold, clipped statements distancing themselves from his company. One by one, they jumped ship like rats from a burning yacht. Then came his wife, Vanessa Dixon. Highland Park social royalty. She filed for divorce within 48 hours of the second news segment airing, citing irreconcilable betrayal and naming unnamed children in sealed filings. She may have played her role in public, but clearly, she'd known enough to be dangerous when it counted. Next came the lawsuits. 3 former employees filed civil claims. One woman, Angela, the same name I'd seen in the old blog post, came forward in a sit-down interview with KDFW, backed by a lawyer who looked like he didn't lose. "I was paid to disappear," she said on air. "But I won't stay gone anymore." It was surreal watching it unfold. I'd once thought Curtis Dixon was untouchable. But now, the same power he used to silence people became the weight dragging him under, and I didn't feel guilt. I felt power, not the kind that controls people, but the kind that comes from reclaiming something stolen. Truth. Mama stayed quiet through it all. She barely watched the news, barely left the house. But when I showed her the article with Curtis's photo under the headline "Developer Faces Legal Storm Over Secret Settlements," she took a long breath and whispered, "It's about time." Earl never reached out. I didn't expect him to, but I hoped he saw it, hoped he recognized that the daughter he raised had fought back, not for vengeance alone, but for him too. Because everything Curtis built had been built on what he took from us: his affair, his silence, his money. And now, the foundation was rotting. A week after the story broke, I walked past one of Curtis's construction sites in Deep Ellum. The fences were still up, but the work had stopped. The sign that once read "Coming Soon," Dixon Heights luxury residences, had been torn down. Curtis Dixon had spent his life constructing towers of power and deception, and I had leveled them with the truth. I wasn't his mistake, I was his reckoning, and Dallas would remember me, not for who my father was, but for what I did when I found out. 3 months after the scandal broke, I stood on the porch of a house Earl had dreamed about for years. It wasn't huge, just a 1-story brick home on a quiet cul-de-sac in Cedar Hill. It had a wraparound porch, a yard with real grass, and a garage big enough to park his truck and still store his old tools. He used to point out houses like this when we'd drive around on Sundays. One day, he'd say, "One day, baby girl, I'll get us something with a porch like that. Somewhere quiet." But one day never came. Life got in the way. Bills. Responsibilities. Then the weight of secrets. Until now, I used part of the settlement, not from Curtis himself, but from the property he'd quietly signed over to my mother years ago. A lawyer helped us sell it, fair and legal. No strings. No more shadows. I bought the house in Earl's name. Put the deed in his hands myself. At first, he didn't speak. Just held the folder, flipping it open and closed like he wasn't sure it was real. "This some kind of joke?" he asked, voice rough. "No joke," I said. "It's yours." He looked at me for a long time. "I didn't raise you to pay me back." "You didn't raise me to stay silent either," I replied. "You taught me to stand up." This is me standing up for you. He blinked fast, nodded once, then pulled me into the kind of hug that says everything words can't. We moved him in the following weekend. Mama came too. They didn't say much to each other, but there was a peace between them, an understanding that the war was over. Curtis Dixon's name faded from the news after a while. Another scandal came along, as they always do. But I knew the damage was done. His empire would never recover, and I didn't care if people remembered him. I cared that they remembered Earl. I started a nursing scholarship in his name, the Earl Washington Future Care Fund, for young black students in South Dallas. The first recipient hugged me like I was family. I guess in some way, I was. The DNA test that shattered my life also gave me something I never expected: clarity. It showed me who I was, who I wasn't, and what I deserved to become. I wasn't the daughter of a man who used his power to destroy. I was the daughter of the man who stayed, the man who taught me how to fight, not with fists, but with truth. And now, I had given him the one thing he never asked for, but always deserved: a home, built not with secrets, but with love. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful, real-life inspired tales of truth, betrayal, and redemption. Drop a comment below. Have you ever uncovered a family secret that changed everything? And remember, sometimes the truth doesn't break us, it sets us free. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next story.